Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, and I am the host of this podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. I am also a newly minted USA Today bestselling author of the novel Blank. I've created a whole community of book lovers around this podcast, a publishing company, reading retreats, a bookstore, and more. Learn more at zibbymedia.com or follow me on social at Zibby Owens or join the community at Zibby Readers. Steven Rowley is the author of the GUNCLE Abroad. He's been on this podcast several times before and will be part of our Palm Springs retreat, which is in September. Steven Rowley is the best-selling author of 5 novels, including Lily and the Octopus, which was a Washington Post notable book, The Editor, an NPR Best Book of the Year, The GUNCLE, winner of the 22nd Thurber Prize for American Humor, which, by the way, is a huge, huge deal, and Goodreads Choice Awards finalist for Novel of the Year, and The Celebrants, and of course, The GUNCLE, and now The GUNCLE Abroad. His fiction has been translated into 20 languages. He resides in Palm Springs, California. Welcome, Steven. Thanks so much for coming back on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss The GUNCLE Abroad. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. It's a joy to be back with you.
Oh, I really loved this book. I really love all your books, but this book especially, I think, because I have kids at this age and stage and, with loss mixed with raising children, mixed with new love, there's just so much stuff. And the escapist piece of it, too, was just so great. So anyway, I really enjoyed it. Congratulations. It's really awesome. Thanks.
I'm thrilled to hear that. Thank you.
So, okay, tell listeners what The GUNCLE Abroad is about and maybe touch on The GUNCLE in case people haven't read it.
Yeah, let's backtrack there for a moment. The GUNCLE came out in May of 2021. For those who missed that first book, you don't need to read the first book to enjoy this one, but I think there'll be a little bit more sort of inside jokes and whatnot that you might understand the relationships between the characters if you start with the first one. But in that first book, Patrick O'Hara, was sort of a semi-retired television sitcom actor at the time, was living a somewhat reclusive life in Palm Springs when he was tasked with taking in his niece and nephew for the summer after the death of their mom. And it sort of led to a season of healing for all 3 of them. And, I always say the one thing an author has absolutely no control over is the state of the world when their book is released. And to the extent that came out at a time when vaccines were first available, but we were all emerging from a dark year. And, just like these characters are sort of going through a dark time and finding their way sort of through. It was sort of a book that resonated in a certain moment. And I was shocked by the embrace that people had for these characters. And, it took on a life of its own. It became a slow but steady bestseller. Whoopi Goldberg held it up as a favorite book on The View. A movie's in the works, and then it ended up winning the Thurber Prize for American Humor, which is sort of the highest prize for written humor in this country. And so I was just bowled over by the hold that book has with readers, which did not make it easy to decide to write a sequel because the last thing I wanted to undo was any of that magic, or undo any of the goodwill that readers had for these characters. There's a lot of pressure, but I think a lot of people assumed that I missed writing Patrick. And indeed, he's a fun character to write, but, spoiler alert, there's a lot of Patrick right here. So I can hang out with Patrick anytime, but my thoughts kept turning to the kids. Mm-hmm. And, it's not a spoiler to say at the end of that first book, they go back to their home in Connecticut where their mom is no longer there. And my heart kept turning to the kids. In many ways, their grief journey was just beginning at the end of that first book. And I felt I really needed to check in, and see, are the kids okay? Are the kids okay? So that sort of led me to the idea for a sequel.
Wow. So did you feel super nervous starting it out, or did you just jump right back in? I saw that you read a lot of other sequels and series to prepare, which I found very interesting.
Yeah, sequels have their own drawbacks and potential pitfalls. And in fact, Patrick in the book has quite strong feelings about sequels. And I guess I do too. Although I will say that I think Mamma Mia 2, here we go again, is a superior film to Mamma Mia. So it can be done. It can be done. Yeah, it was hard. I was able to jump in as so far as I knew the characters. That helped. But I had to give a lot of thought to the kids and how they've aged, because the GUNCLE Abroad picks up 5 years after the events of the first book. And the children's father, Greg, Patrick's brother, is engaged to be remarried. And the kids are not happy about it. And so I had to give a lot of thought to like not only how these kids have aged in 5 years, they're 11 and 14 now, which is older than how quickly can I subtract 5 from 11, 6 and 9, which they were in the first book. You know, that's a big age difference, having kids, right? They age a lot in those years. But not only that, they've had their Uncle Patrick in their life for 5 years. So they're not as charmed by some of his antics as they were in the first book. And also, I had to give great thought to how grief would inform how they each aged, not having their mom. I think for Maisie, the older child, becoming a young woman, she's taken on kind of a maternal role for her younger brother. And Grant, the boy, I think not having his mom has sort of delayed his adolescence a little bit, has sort of slowed his maturation. And so, I had to get to know the kids again and sort of meet them where they are.
Interesting. I'm doing something similar with my book Blank right now. Don't tell my publisher because they said don't write a sequel. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to. But then I tried to write it like 100 other ways and it's like not going well. I have the same thing. It's like 5 years later with the same kids because I know them and I know me. It was basically the character. So what did you learn?
And sometimes you can't avoid it. Sometimes, I was talking to Andrew Sean Greer, who wrote Less and then Less is Lost. He had themes he wanted to explore in a new book. And he thought, well, wait a minute, I already have the perfect character to explore these themes. And sometimes it's better with both for the writer and for the reader. If you have a little bit of history with a character, you can usually, but sequels, it is sort of, what do you want to do with a sequel? A sequel itself is just sort of a tool, but what do you want to say with it? What do you want to accomplish? And so yeah.
Did you learn, what did you take away? I haven't talked to anyone else who's done a deep dive in sequels. What did you learn?
Well, I will say this now, because my publisher was always like, well, will there be a third GUNCLE? And I was like, can we just wait and see if anyone buys the second one first? So I will say I've been extremely bowled over by the way that people have lined up for this new adventure. And I'm sort of, I'm really grateful for that. It's been, I think, 3 weeks now. The book is out and it's doing really well. And I'm hearing wonderful things from readers. So, as far as that's concerned, highly recommend. But, it was also a message that I really believed in, that I wanted, this is a book, it's about maturing in a way. And hopefully I'm maturing as a writer, but the kids, not only the kids growing, as we've discussed, but Patrick, the main character, is also growing and is facing turning 50. And that's, something I wanted to explore because that was something I was going through in my own life. But also it's a book, and this is what made it so rewarding. It's a book about finding joy again after loss, and that there is room for celebration again, even after we lose someone we love dearly. And sometimes the best way to honor someone we've lost is by embracing life. And, to the extent that that's the message of the book, that's a joyous message to embrace. And so it made the whole thing, I think, worthwhile.
And you do say in the book, it's terrible, but it does make you stronger. And there's that, right?
There is that. Yeah. If you need a silver lining, there is that. Yeah.
Where did the loss come from for you? Or where did this, I'm assuming, where do you write? How do you write so authentically about loss? Where is that coming from?
Yeah. Grief is a theme that I've returned to through a number of my books. And I try to approach it differently, right? I just think, I worry sometimes that readers think, I must know like a school bus filled of people that just went over a cliff somehow because I write about loss so much. And that's not true. I've had my share like anybody else. But I do think grief is an important theme to return to, because I think as a Western culture, particularly, we're kind of bad at grief, or we approach it with an arrogance, like, oh, I can schedule it for later. I'm busy now, I can schedule it for later, or I can just power through it, or that it's even temporary, that it's even a temporary condition, and it's not something that, seeps into us and becomes part of the fabric of who we are. And the irony, I think, is that, loss is something that should be one of the more uniting human experiences. If we're lucky enough to love, we we'll probably lose at some point. And instead, I think so often, like we think, oh, we're a burden on someone if we're grieving, or we have to isolate and separate ourselves. And that's just not true. I want there to be a better conversation about grief and grieving. And even though reading can be a solitary activity, it's podcasts like this, and it's book groups and discussions that even though we're reading the book alone, we are coming together in conversation with others who have read the book as well. And so
totally agree.
I think books are a great way to tackle that.
Oh my gosh, the note from the mom. Oh my gosh. I mean,
I'm always going to make you cry. I mean, hopefully I make you laugh.
Yes.
But I'm always going to make you cry.
You are. It's amazing. You are also going to make me travel, because I swear I'm reading the book and I was like, okay, is this a real hotel? And so then I Googled the Intermezzo, right? Intermezzo is called?
Yeah, the Grand Hotel Tremezzo in Lake Como, Italy. Yeah.
So I Googled it. I sent it to Kyle, my husband. I was like, we have to go here. Then I emailed them and said, like, do you happen to have any availability next week? Anyway, they're full, but I'm determined. I am determined to go.
You asked them during wedding season if they had any availability.
I couldn't even have gone, but it was just like a pipe dream. I'm like, well, we could cancel all of our plans with the kids and just take them to Italy, which we wouldn't have.
It's stunning. It is a real hotel. It's stunning. I have stayed there. I try to write about places I've been. And here we go, right? This is a European jaunt. I think it's also no surprise anybody who loves these books would not be surprised to hear that I was inspired by the Auntie Mame books from the 1950s, and then became a wonderful movie with Rosalind Russell and a Broadway show with Angela Lansbury musical. But the sequel to the first Auntie Mame novel was a book called Around the World with Auntie Mame. And these are wonderful reads if anyone wants to go back and find them in paperback. So I knew if I ever revisited these characters as a sort of further hat tip to that series, I would be taking them abroad. But I also think it's important to write about places we know and places we've been. I think, we've all read books, and you may have even interviewed writers. Like, you can tell when a writer is really just taken with their own research, but it's missing that piece that sort of lived to the tactile things, right? Like how the air feels, or what the air smells like, or what the food tastes like. And, it's all those sort of wonderful things that come from, I think, actually having been to these places. So I try, but I will cop to the fact that I have never been to Salzburg. I've not done the Sound of Music tour, which Patrick takes the kids on.
What about Plaza Athénée in Paris? Isn't that where they?
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Amazing,
heaven.
Right?
Yeah.
The chocolate showed. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's so immersive. It's like a whole vacation in a book.
Yeah. And now I've got the travel itch. These were all trips that I used as inspiration, were pre sort of COVID trips. So, this is, cut to me on the phone with my accountant being like, hey, can we reopen those tax returns from 2017, 18, and 19?
Totally.
Now these are research trips. Research trips. I didn't know it at the time, but they are.
Oh my gosh, I love it. The other thing that I found so fun is just how many movie references you made, because these are like, that is if I could put a canon of movies together that I loved, it would be in this book, from Love Actually and Harry Met Sally. It's just like all the ones, every single one you mentioned, I'm like, that one. Then I was looking, do you have a list of the movies that you mentioned somewhere? Does that exist?
No, but I actually credit my mom, so if you want to sit your kids down and have them watch some of the, I do a little film festival for them, because I credit my mom, with sitting me down to watch The Sound of Music when I was a kid. And I was like, a 9-year-old boy. She practically had to tie me to a chair. Like, I don't want to watch about singing nuns. Are you nuts? But, 10 minutes in, I was captivated, absolutely captivated. And, she introduced me to a lot of movies that I think have affected the way that I write, even though there were movies and not books. Like, I think of the Terms of Endearment, the film, not the Larry McMurtry novel, which is different, or Beaches or Steel Magnolias. And I always think of these as my favorite comedies. And I was talking to someone about this, and they're like, oh, you mean the one where the daughter dies, or the best friend dies, or the mother dies? And I was like, oh yeah, I guess they are. But what stuck with me was the humor, and that is what I try to put in my books too, that even though sad things happen, humor has always been the way through.
Yes.
for me. And it's that mix of a laugh out loud moment on one page and heartbreak on the next that I think has really defines my work, even though the stories themselves are pretty different.
I totally agree. And by the way, I have been doing that with my kids. And we
Good.
recently have watched 16 Candles and
Yes.
Clueless, and they go to their dads and watch like all the action movies, and I'm like,
Sure.
no. And I'm like, meanwhile the kids who watch this are 10, 9, and 11. And I'm like, it's probably too old for them, but it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
I also think there's nothing that will show you just how perceptive kids are than showing them a movie and like asking questions and realizing like they can spot a crush from a mile away. It's amazing. So, and books too, you referenced Judy Blume and like all these, there's just beloved. It's like, it's clear that we are of the same era, but even if you weren't, it wouldn't even matter. But
yeah, I don't think it matters. Part of it is, having a sort of a queer lead in a story, like, pop culture is such an important language in the gay community. We trade in sort of pop cultural references, but in a novel format, it takes a long time to write a book, and then publishing is a long lead industry, as you know. And so, it could be 2 years, the whole sort of process or more getting something to the shelf. And then you want your book to have a long shelf life after that. So you don't want anything, the references in that you don't want to be like too current or too of the moment, because unless you're really anchoring your story in a specific year for a reason. But if the references are all sort of classic, then hopefully the book has a more timeless feel.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Did you outline the story, or did you just have it in your head what was going to happen, or did it just all come out as you went?
I outlined the travel itinerary, I think. But beyond that, I'm sort of a classic pantser, as we say in the biz, right? We fly by the seat of my pants. And in this case, I sort of knew I had a strong sense of the opening scene. And I knew kind of the ending. I knew where I wanted to go. And beyond that, I had travel destinations along the way. I had almost like a map. Like here's where their Eurorail tickets, and here's where they're going to go. And then I let the journey sort of unfold in front of me. And that was a joyous way to write this book, because it allowed me to feel like I was on the trip too.
Can I read a funny scene from the beginning? Is that okay?
Yes.
I think I dog-eared it. Your dialogue is always so hilarious. Here, wait, hold on. Oh, this is from like the very beginning, but okay. Grant's game console, Grant is the child, the boy. Grant's game console made a sound like something swirling a drain, and he groaned, "Why can't Dad marry Palmina?" Speaking of nemesis, a cold chill ran down Patrick's spine. Palmina's a lesbian, you know that. Grant didn't seem to view that as disqualifying. Yeah, but gay marriage is legal now. Yes, for gay people to marry other gay people. Wait, why would you want your dad to marry Palmina? Grant shrugged, but they all knew the answer. Palmina was the very definition of sprezzatura. In every way, she exuded an effortless cool. Maybe you should marry her. Gay men can't marry lesbians, Patrick said, appalled. Oh no, here come the GUNCLE rules. Maisie stuck out her tongue in protest. GUNCLE rules were Patrick's little bon mot and instructions for living that he previously doled out like candy. Brunch is awesome. When a gay man hands you his phone, look only at what he is showing you. Bottomless mimosas are not the same as pantless mimosas, those sort of things. Grant pressed, undeterred. Why not? She's gay. You're gay. You just said. Because that's not how it
works. Yeah, so here's the thing, writing a sequel, you do want to introduce new characters too. People, think about your own lives 5 years ago, 5 years from now. There are new people in them, 100%. Hopefully. And one of my favorite lines from the first book was, I think Maisie was being a little obstinate at one point, and Patrick warns her not to make an enemy of him. And he says, "You can't spell nemesis without me, sis." And so I wanted to give Patrick a nemesis this time. And I thought, a wicked stepmother was too easy. That's too on the nose. And so instead, the children's stepmother-to-be has a lesbian sister, or the children's soon-to-be Lance. And she is now the apple of their eye in the way that Patrick used to be, and it drives him nuts. So that was quite a fun new addition to the cast. I was just listening to you read them. I also read the audio. I've read the audiobooks for both the GUNCLE and the GUNCLE Abroad. And in the first book, Grant has a lisp. The younger boy has a lisp, which I thought was so genius on the page because I'm like, I'm not going to have to tag every piece of dialogue. I don't have to write he said, she said, Grant said, Maisie said. It'll be clear which child is talking. And then it came time to narrate the audiobook, and I was like, son of a bitch. Why did I do this? Why did I do this? So, and then I think I'm so smart. Page 1 of the GUNCLE Abroad, Grant has outgrown his lisp. And I was like, okay, there we go. But then I realized all the new characters in this book are Italian. So I had to, do some like high school drama department level Italian accents for this new one. But
oh my gosh. Well, I know you said you wanted to see how the sales were going before finishing some sort of trilogy. Have you been inspired by becoming an instant bestseller? And will you then add to it, or are you writing something else? What are you up to?
I don't know. I think what really helped me with this book was the time jump. And dropping in on these characters instead of, I think it's, in terms of recapturing the magic, I think it would have been hard to just pick up exactly where we left off. Because I want to, again, use these characters to say something about either the world that we live in or, about growing up or whatnot. And so I if I do revisit again, don't be surprised if there's a little time jump again. And to help with that, I think it won't be the next book that I write probably, but I wouldn't be surprised. Although if I'm back on your podcast talking about the GUNCLE in space or something, you have to have an intervention. You have to stop me.
If you write about the GUNCLE in space and I am just still sitting here in the same spot in my same chair, I don't know. We're gonna have to be
beaming in from the International Space Station.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, okay. So what advice do you have for aspiring authors?
Oh, goodness. I'm someone who was always very jealous, someone who came out of a prestigious writing program, Iowa, for instance, and sold their first book at 25 and, was off to the races. That was not my publishing journey. I didn't publish till I was well into my 40s. And so what I want to say more than anything is stick with it. And, there were moments when it felt like I was the last person who hadn't given up on me. Others were like, well, what about law school? You think you sure like not law school? And I don't know where it came from, but I had this inner confidence that writing was something I needed to do. And so I'm happy I stuck with it. And for me, who I consider myself more self-taught, because I didn't formally study creative writing, although I did, in college, a lot of critical writing. But I was always, in the years I was like trying to break through, I was always very apologetic about calling myself a writer, and I wish now that I had the confidence to say, oh no, I'm a writer, even though I held down different day jobs and I was earning my income in different ways and paying the bills in different ways. I wish, what I want to say to aspiring writers, if you are writing, you are a writer. And you can say that proudly and with confidence, and it doesn't matter where your income comes from. If you sit down and are putting in the work, you are a writer, and stick with it. And, eventually good things can happen.
Amazing. Wow. Well, Steven, thank you so much. And I'm so excited you're going to be with Byron on the retreat in Palm Springs in the fall. I'll see you in September.
We will see you in September. It's going to be warm still, I think. So pack light. But
yeah, I heard
that's all right. It's just plenty of room in the suitcase for books.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, amazing.
I'll open up the caftan closet for you, and
great.
We'll have fun.
Perfect.
We'll have a lot of fun.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and I really loved it. And thank you. And oh my gosh, it just hit home. I don't know. Thank you.
Yay. It's always fun to talk to you.
You too. Okay. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. If you love it, please leave a review and follow us on social @ZibbyOwens and @ZibbyReaders.